Today, I had the opportunity to interview the founders and creators of the Droplette. I was so excited to get this opportunity to have a call with them, ask them all of your questions, get some clarity on some of the things that have come up, not only here on YouTube, but also in my private Facebook group and on Instagram. So I'm going to put every single question that I ask in the description box along with its timestamp. So if you have any questions about this little powerhouse device, it's likely going to be in this video and you're gonna get the answer straight from them. So I do hope that this video today is helpful. I hope that it answers some of your questions, and I'm gonna roll right on into it and I will talk to you on the other side.
So if you guys would really quickly just introduce yourselves and let us know who you are and a little bit about you, that would be great.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us, Penn. I'm Madhavi Gavini. I'm one of the founders and co-inventors of Droplette. I'm a mathematician by training. Before I did Droplette, I worked in drug design. I designed therapeutics for pediatric cardiomyopathy. So very different from the beauty space, but very excited to be working in it.
I'm Rathi Srinivas. I'm the other founder and co-inventor of Droplette. I've actually known Madhavi for over 14 years at this point, so we really go way back. I'm by training a chemical engineer. I did my PhD on lab-on-a-chip technologies and medical diagnostics, and I've always been pretty excited about clinically translational technologies. So working on Droplette has been hugely fulfilling and really exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad that we're going to have this opportunity to have this discussion. I have a bunch of questions to ask you that I've gathered from various platforms across the internet. So bear with me. I do have lots of notes, but hopefully we will get through all of these questions today. And I really do want to say thank you for joining me, because this is such exciting technology, and I know that so many people are interested. So let's just get right into it. You both have a mission that is much bigger than skincare. Can you tell me how the Droplette started, how long ago it started? What was the inspiration for developing this, type of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everyone in biotechnology is familiar with the idea of needle-free drug delivery. It's been a problem in the field for a very long time. So it's something that Rathi and I had been familiar with for many years, I think probably since we were in college, if not before, just because it's kind of this big fundamental problem. But for us, what really kind of drove us into developing this particular technology and taking it forward was we learned about this disease called epidermolysis bullosa. So my background is in therapeutics development. So I worked on in silico models or computational models to design drugs, and Rathi worked on the chemistry and stabilization. And a few years ago, we learned about this disease where basically patients are missing a key gene that's important for skin adhesion. So without this gene, when it's missing, and it's a hereditary illness, it's genetic, patients end up having really large open wounds over 90% of their body. It's incredibly painful. The mortality rate is so high. And for us, the thing that was just so striking is we can mass produce the gene, like we have the technology to do that, but it's the delivery that's the big problem. And so we started talking about, ideas around needle-free drug delivery, and we tried a bunch of different things that actually didn't work. And eventually we built an early version of Droplette that had a couple of the unique components that kind of just allowed us to create fast-moving submicron droplets that had a really good penetration profile into skin. And it took, honestly, it took years of iterating, and it was like a side project for a very long time before we were able to get the very first version of this. And from there, it just kind of took off. We were so lucky to get early funding from CASIS, which is the grant funding arm of NASA. And we were able to get seed funding, and it kind of grew into its own thing. But really, it started with this idea of wanting to be able to deliver genetic material into patients with this rare disease. And that's an area that's still very important to us.
Honestly, that is probably the aspect of this entire thing that is the most touching, because I dove down the rabbit hole of that skin condition after. And as somebody who studies skin disorders and diseases, I've never actually heard of that. And it's heartbreaking. So it's one of those things where immediately you think, so many of these things that come into the skincare world that are effective, if they start in medicine, the thing that they're used to treat in medicine is usually far more compelling than any skincare application. Can you explain in a semi-layperson's terms how the droplet works? What exactly is the droplet doing to, why should we use it and how does it work?
So our technology is a riff on another piece of technology, which is called a needle-free jet injector. And those are used right now to deliver drugs, often vaccines, into people. And what it is it's a high-speed jet that incises the skin and pushes drugs into the bloodstream. What we do instead is, instead of a high-speed jet, we have a high-speed aerosol. So our droplets are very small, but they're moving at very high velocity. And that's kind of the secret sauce for our technology. That's what's fundamentally different between this and other misters and sprays out there. And that's through basically the type of pump system that we use, the way it's oriented, and sort of the years of testing that have gone into really perfecting that. And what that means is these are really tiny droplets. They're less than a micron in size. They're moving at very high velocity, and that gives them a better penetration profile into skin. And the way it does that, it's a couple of things. One is simply the fact that they're fast and small, and obviously things that are fast and small can get in deeper. It's also, you're getting some degree of disruption of the skin barrier. It's very mild. It's probably just a couple, microseconds in length, but that's enough for far more of it to actually get into skin. And Rathi, do you want to talk a little bit about like the Weber number?
So basically, to simplify it, there's like two different regimes that fluids can be in. One is like when you just spray out of a bottle, like you can go to CVS and buy a bottle and you spray it. And if you spray it on your hand, it'll just pool on the surface of your skin. That's in a regime that's like kind of low velocity. It's not moving that fast. And when the droplets come together, they coalesce and they form a big pool on the top of your skin. On the other hand, there's what we do, which is where you get the drops out of the device and the pump is propelling them toward the skin. And when they hit the skin, they almost like splash upon impact onto the skin, and then they break up into even smaller droplets. And it's the breakup effect and the speed of the drops that enables the ingredients to get deeper inside of the skin. And so fundamentally, we're not in that pooling regime. We're in a regime where instead, like, it's called inertial domination over, it's called a viscous effect domination. Those are like the technical terms for it. But really all it means is that it's moving really fast, and it's moving fast enough that it can hit the surface and break into smaller droplets.
So is the droplet that I have in my hand, is this the same one that you use in your trials and that we see when we see the pictures on your website, et cetera? Are you using this actual version of the device?
So this is the same version that we're using in our clinical studies.
Okay.
Absolutely. In some of our more medical applications, we work with an open module, which Rathi can talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, so fundamentally, the components in there are exactly the same. We configure the way that it's inside a little bit differently so that we can like put liquids inside right off like an open module. Or I actually have a really old one here on my desk with wires hanging out of it. This is like a prototype version that we used in one of our studies a long time ago. But fundamentally, the two components that make the technology, make the mist and make the droplets smaller, that's exactly the same. And they're in exactly the same orientation with respect to each other.
Is this being used at Walter Reed? And if it is, it probably doesn't look like this, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the one we sent to Walter Reed had a giant power supply attached to it.
Okay.
And like it definitely gives the scientists there a little bit more wiggle of room to, try different formulations and other stuff like that. The version that we sell to consumers, it's very much, it's like it was designed with an industrial designer, and it's ergonomic in different ways, but fundamentally it's the same technology.
So on your website, you have some really impressive before and after photos. Are there other ways that that Droplet is, helping to stimulate collagen, elastin, helping with hydration? What are the other ways that beyond just assessing before and after pictures that Droplet is actually getting ingredients deeper into the skin?
So I mentioned earlier that Droplet was designed to be a medical device. So a lot of our early studies were basically designed in the same way you would do it for any other medical device. So there's experiments that were done on ex vivo skin. So that's skin that's outside, that's taken after it's basically grown in a petri plate. And with that, we're able to actually try to deliver things through Droplette. For example, we have some data on our website showing genetic material being delivered through it. And then you can section the skin and look at it under a scope, and you can look for how deep the ingredient is going in. The plasmid, for example, you're able to visualize it. And it's a very standardized set of tests that we're able to do with that. So basically, the two main ways you do it is you try to deliver plasmid. It's done into live skin, and then once it expresses into protein, it will fluoresce, so it'll turn bright green, and you can visualize that under a scope. The second way you could do it is you can spray it, and then you can use a technique called mass spectrometry to section out the tissue, and you can look at how deep it goes in, and you can look at its behavior over a period of time. So we've done both sets of tests, and that's really the fundamental experiments we do. Clinical sort of before and afters are really meant to show what it can do for your skin versus being the standard, right, we use to determine whether the technology works.
That was completely fascinating to me. And I just think that it's really interesting to hear how on your side of things, the science is assessed, because as a relative layperson to you, I think that it's easy to think that it's a really simple process when in fact it's incredibly scientific and a lot deeper than looking at pictures. What has been the biggest challenge to developing the Droplette?
I think it's really about getting the user experience exactly right. So we've taken this thing through 12 iterations. The first one was like really big, was designed to be like something that sits in a doctor's office. And we took that, and it's come a long way from those days, like about, I think almost 6 years ago is when we built the very first prototype of this. And we've had to take a lot of feedback from users, from doctors, from like clinicians like yourself, Penn. And I think that helps us a ton to understand how we make the product really perfect for the users so they can get exactly what they need out of it. And I'd say like getting all those features right has been it's been the biggest challenge, but also probably the most exciting part of developing the technology.
And I think to piggyback off of that, the version we built 6 years ago, it doesn't do what the version we've built today does, right? Those early versions, it was a lot of iteration around the fluid physics and really the fundamental stuff that drives it. And I would say really the early versions of the technology, anything before 2017, 2018, are functionally obsolete now.
So since it can hit the skin and break into smaller droplets and get in what you have said, 20 cell layers deep. Can you explain what that means? Are we talking 20 cell layers into the stratum corneum? Are we talking about into the living epidermis? Are we talking about potentially deeper than that? Or are we just talking about into the dead cells of the stratum corneum? Because this is a question that's come up a bunch in my Facebook group and on YouTube. People are, just asking, what exactly does that mean, 20 cell layers deep?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we use 20 cell layers deep because we're referencing a very specific set of experiments where we're delivering genetic material. So that's a plasmid. And for context, that's between 5 and 6 million Daltons in molecular weight. And Dalton is just the size of the molecule. So you know this really well, but anything over 500 Daltons doesn't absorb. A lot of the molecules we're trying to deliver more effectively, like collagen, are 1,000 Daltons. So this is in the millions of Daltons. And what we were able to show is that we can deliver genetic material 20 cell layers deep into live cells, and you're able to see the gene actually express. So it goes through the skin, through the cell membrane, and then it actually gets converted from DNA, from plasmid, into RNA, and then from RNA into protein. And so for us, that was a really important experiment because it shows us a few things. 1, we're getting in really deep. 2, we're getting into cells. 3, we're not damaging the cells because the cells are able to actually go through their whole process where they can basically, go from DNA to RNA and RNA to protein, and a sick or damaged cell would not be able to do that. So it really shows both the delivery efficacy as well as the safety of it. And that's the experiment we reference in our, on our website and in other places. When it comes to smaller molecules, you're obviously going to get a lot deeper because they're hundreds or thousands of times smaller than that.
Okay, so speaking of that, we've gotten a lot of questions about the Dalton size of vitamin A, for example, or vitamin A derivatives, and also about the molecular size of glycolic acid and how they don't need any help getting deeper into the skin. And if they do get that deep into the skin, can they potentially be harmful? And I know from our discussions that that's not the case here, but I'm hoping that you would explain the benefit of delivering something like a retinoid into the skin deeper and something like an alpha hydroxy acid into the skin deeper. Why would we want to do that? And what is the benefit, especially versus topicals?
Yeah, so I think like with topicals, for the most part, you're still at the end of the day diffusion limited. So if you put it on your skin, the molecule is small enough. If it's like glycolic acid, for example, it's smaller than 500 Daltons, but it's still not gonna be able to get through the skin quickly. So at the end of the day, a lot of what you put on the skin just gets rubbed away, it gets sweated, it gets wiped before that molecule ever has a chance to get inside of your skin. I'll make it like super clear that our goal is not to get to the bloodstream. It's always been to get through the layers of the skin and to be most effective inside the skin layers to get more of the ingredient inside locally. So from that aspect, I think it's more beneficial to deliver more of the ingredient locally through the skin layers. Like Madhavi was saying before, like we basically, once we break past the stratum corneum, the molecules just diffuse through. At the same time, we know from some of our previous studies that it doesn't get all the way, like a high concentration of it doesn't get into your bloodstream. But even if it does, it's not really a big deal because all these ingredients we're using are all approved by the FDA for being safe as cosmetic ingredients. So there's nothing in there that someone hasn't tested at some point and known that it's safe if it's absorbed inside of your bloodstream. That being said, our goal is really to deliver in the layers of the skin. It's not to get it inside of the blood because that's where we're trying to be most beneficial.
To talk about those two ingredients specifically, so I mean, a vitamin A derivative is something we already have vitamin A in our body, and it's something that people take orally, so that's not a huge concern. But when we're getting it in deeper, you're actually, you're getting more of it to the cells where it can be most effective. And it's the same thing with the glycolic acid. You're getting, you're getting it a little bit deeper, and that's why a lot of our customers are seeing those additional benefits where they're getting a peel-like effect without the physical peel.
I know that you have, I can't remember which, but it's the Rosa, damascena. I can't remember exactly which version. I've had some people ask about that and I think I asked you this in one of our first calls. Is it there as a fragrance ingredient? I know the answer to this now, but I'm going to ask you again for everyone else. But when I initially asked you, I was asking if it was there as a fragrance component. And I'm just hoping that you will explain to everyone why that ingredient is in the capsules that it's in and what its benefits are.
Yeah, we actually did not choose it as a fragrance ingredient, but the fragrance is certainly like a nice little bonus that a lot of people seem to like. We chose it because it's really high in vitamin E and vitamin C, and there were quite a few papers that we read that were peer-reviewed, published with clinical trials around this oil showing that it does have some pretty significant skin benefits in terms of the other small plant molecules that are present in that oil, which is why we chose to use that instead of just a pure vitamin E.
So when we use the droplet, obviously there's this mist and, if we're breathing, we're going to breathe some in. I've had some questions about the lungs and the eyes. And can you explain how the mist affects our lungs or affects our eyes, or if it's safe to, breathe in?
Yeah, so it doesn't make it down into your lungs. I can tell you that. So the particle size in air is not big enough for it to get into your lungs. And we actually verified this by, there's a type of a study called a cascade impaction, which basically mimics the lung. It's a lab test you can do. And we sent the device off to do that testing to make sure that we're not creating an aerosol that's so fine in the air that it can actually get absorbed by your lungs. So from the aspect of inhalation, there's no safety risk at all. From the aspect of your eyes, we kind of think of it the same way as we think of like shampoo or something like that. If it gets in your eyes, you rinse it out. But once again, it's perfectly fine if it gets in. And a large part of this is because all the ingredients we're using are in other cosmetic products, and we've tried to really minimize the number of extra ingredients that are in there.
Oh, I think that's also a big part of why around the eyes, why it's a closed system right now. So you have to use our capsules because we know every single ingredient in there. They've been designed with dermatologists. They've been tested by dermatologists. We know that they're safe. And if we were to open it up where people would put their own formulations in there, we simply couldn't control for that safety, and that would be a risk.
I can definitely say, as someone who's used this now for several months, every single day, I've never had, and I actually use that collagen right up above my ocular bone. I love it for under the eyes, that crepey skin. I love it for crow's feet. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I even, and I'm not saying that you suggest this, but I even use it just below, on up here under my eyebrow and everything. I think it's fantastic around the eyes. And I've never, not a single time, had an ounce of irritation. Just experienced any irritation. So for me, I'm not concerned about it just as an end user. So it's nice to hear from your end. Can you tell me if you have in the works any capsules that maybe are going to target some other skin conditions, or can you give us any insight into your future plans with the droplet and with the capsules?
Yeah, we're really excited to roll out additional formulations over the next few months. So we're interested in a few different ingredients. We're looking at tranexamic acid, TEA, because we think that would be amazing to help treat melasma. So we're looking at a formulation that really features that ingredient. We're looking at formulations featuring niacinamide that, based on some clinical studies around how that could be really helpful for rosacea and redness. And we're looking at a couple of other ultra hydrating formulations that we think could really help with dry skin, and maybe even mild to moderate eczema, so atopic dermatitis and psoriasis.
Oh, that's so neat, because niacinamide in itself can help with skin hydration. Obviously, we know.
Absolutely.
Barrier function and that kind of thing. So those two things are hand in hand. It's funny because I use the collagen capsule probably too much. I love it so much. And I find, my best friend, just a little anecdotal evidence here. My best friend has used kind of the same skincare for years and years and years. She's in her 50s, and she purchased the droplet, and she's been using the collagen capsule, and I see her once a week. And last week she'd been using for 2 weeks, and I could not believe her skin. I kind of forgot that she'd gotten the droplet, honestly. And I said to her, what are you doing today? What's going on with your makeup? She's like, it's the droplet.
Amazing.
It looks, and she is just doing the collagen capsule. She just decided she was going to start there. And I'm just like, okay, well, now you need the retinol. Now you need to, you know what I mean? I really am looking at her and I'm thinking, because I throw the kitchen sink at my skin. So sometimes I have to step back, and I am not a controlled study, that's for sure. And so for her, it was this marked difference in her skin that was really cool to see on my end, because I know how much I love it. But to see it in real life, somebody's change in the quality of their skin was really, really impressive. So that was neat to see. We have a lot of followers that are in the UK, that are in Canada, that are, global. Can you let us know when they might expect to be able to order the droplet?
You're working on it. It is like a top priority project. I think Canada, the EU, and Asian markets are all like ones we're super excited about over the next several months. So I guess just stay tuned, but we're working on it. It's like an active area of research and development for our manufacturing and operations team.
And I'd love to know how do you use the droplet?
I use the glycolic formulations. I have adult acne, which is unfortunate at my age, and I think masks have exacerbated it. So I use the glycolic as a spot treatment for that, and then I use collagen on other days.
It's interesting. I had a breakout, and I attributed it to the mask. It was kind of a mask-me situation, because I am far older than both of you, and I don't normally break out at all. And I remembered in the pictures on your website, the one with the young lady who had acne, and it was just one single use.
Yeah.
I remembered that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And I used 2 capsules one night, and just did. And I am not kidding. I woke up the next day. I think I even posted about this in my Facebook group. My acne wasn't gone, but it was easily 50%. Like the inflammation part of it, where it's really just angry, was definitely diminished. So much so that I felt better about, I could see it was on its the other way. And I just thought, okay, that's crazy, because I'm not somebody who experiences acne very often. So that was another one of those times where I thought, okay, that's great, because I've said that about acne with the droplet. Now I've kind of experienced it. And so I feel confident in that claim, because I actually had it happen to me. So I think that's really, really, really cool.
That's awesome. We actually have copper tripeptides in that formulation as well. And so I think it's a little bit of a 2-1 punch. Like we call it, 1-2 punch. We call it the glycolic because that's the main ingredient in there. It also has salicylic acid and gluconolactone. So those are meant to be antimicrobial. But then the copper tripeptides in there actually are super anti-inflammatory.
Actually, that's one of the things with this also is that you named the capsules after these ingredients that are obviously staples in a good skincare routine. They are. But really, there are so many other ingredients, every single one of them that are like superstars, that it's almost unfortunate that you have to name the capsule one thing because, you know, I mean, I look at the retinol and immediately, for me as somebody who's had melasma for years, and we have it under control, but the arbutin is a huge component to me because I know that retinol combined with a tyrosinase inhibitor is going to help to, you know, block that excess melanin. I mean, I know that. And so when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's not just a retinol capsule. That it can be really, really effective because we know that vitamin A can help with pigment. And we obviously know that arbutin can, so together. So I think that that's really neat. And also I believe it's the collagen capsule that has the turmeric. Is that
That's right?
Yeah. And I mean, turmeric is, you know, the most amazing I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I do think that the capsules are a lot more than just their name is what I'm trying to say. So I think I said that in the blog and in my video, but it is worth repeating because they are not as simple as retinol, you know, collagen and glycolic acid. I'd love to ask you a little bit about the collagen capsule. It's my favorite capsule, and we've definitely gotten questions about, you know, how does the collagen capsule work? What is the benefit of the 10% collagen? And can you explain how that might indeed render more collagen in our skin and how that process works?
Yeah, so the collagen capsule, it is 10% collagen. So I think a lot of this and it also has 3 kinds of peptides in it. Actually, it has the tripeptide and it has 2 other ones, and they all kind of work together. And those are good for promoting things like elastin and other molecules that are important in the skin structure. But I think what this comes down to is that because we're able to deliver deep inside the skin, and we know that we can actually get inside of the cells of the skin, we know that the ingredients we're putting in there can actually get to work inside the cells. And so that's not to say that the collagen that we put inside the cells integrates with the collagen that's there, but we're hoping like the ingredients that we put inside of the cells can actually stimulate the structural proteins inside of the skin because of the ingredients they're made of. They're actually going inside of the cells instead of just sitting on the surface.
So with the collagen capsules, we have the collagen and then we have the argireline in there. And argireline is known as like a peptide form of Botox. And it actually kind of harkens back to how we became a skincare company, because we started off, as I said, as a medical device company, and we tell people about it, our friends and family and investors. And the one question everyone would ask us is, can I use this to deliver Botox into my skin? And as you obviously know, the answer to that is definitely not. Don't aerosolize Botox.
Right?
Don't do that at home.
Oh my gosh, seriously.
But the argireline is, you know, it's a peptide. It has a very similar effect. It's totally safe as an aerosol. And so the idea was the argireline will kind of give you that Botox effect, and then the collagen will give you that plumpness. And as it goes into your skin and it breaks down into, it's a tripeptide, right? Or it's like a repeat structure of proline, hydroxyproline, and the third peptide. And as it breaks down, it's providing those in exactly the right stoichiometry and at the right site so that it can be readily made into new collagen. Right. And then you also have the other proteins in there that are stimulating collagen production. So it's just giving your cells everything they need in one place at one time.
So when you say that it plumps the skin, do you mean that that's through enhanced hydration? And then another is that the breakdown of the collagen, and now you have basically like a recipe for your skin to then create. It's got all the components that it needs to bake the cake to get better skin, kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's a nice way of putting it.
Have you looked into any versions of the Droplette that consumers can use with their own serums or their own, you know, toners or things like that?
Yeah, it's something that we're interested in looking into eventually. There's a couple of reasons why we haven't done it yet. One of them is that every single formula we sell is really optimized to give the mist at a certain strength and to make droplets of a certain size. And so if you just take something you buy off the shelf and put it in the device, there's a really good chance it's not going to mist at all. That's like part of it. The other part of it is what we were talking about before, which is that we want it to be like safe for use. We want to make sure that people aren't spraying things that can get too deep and actually cause problems in their skin. So it's important to us that we curate those formulations for the time being, so that we know that what we're selling people is really safe for their skin and that it's going to be effective when it's delivered through the droplet.
And we work so closely with dermatologists to develop these formulations. They're tested by them. It goes through a pretty rigorous review process. And I think we're just trying to be really cautious because we don't want to put something out there that could cause harm.
Can you tell me a little bit about the dermatologists that you work with? I noticed that one of them is a Harvard dermatologist. I think that there's a lot of value in not only your education and your credentials, but also with the people that you work with. I think that that would be really valuable for people to know, that you definitely work with not only your own skill set and education, but with some amazing dermatologists and doctors as well.
Oh, absolutely. We wouldn't have been able to do this without the dermatologists we work with. So on our advisory board, we have Dr. Rox Anderson, who's a Harvard dermatologist. He's probably best known for developing laser hair removal as well as cool sculpting. So he's a total veteran when it comes to the dermatology device sector, and it's all about efficacy. And we also work very closely with Dr. Leonard Miller, who's also a Harvard-trained dermatologist, and he has a center in Boston called the Boston Center for Facial Rejuvenation. And I know Rathi mentioned earlier, we've gone through dozens of versions of this device, and he's helped us test, I would say, the last 8 or 9 and given us really invaluable feedback. And then we also run all of our ingredients and formulations by him. So he tests them. He knows, what the ingredients are, what they're used for, and helps us develop new formulations and gives us a lot of advice based on the types of patients that he sees. So he will say, for example, this ingredient has been really good for this percentage of my patients with this problem. And that really should be a key focus in the formulations as you develop them.
I think that that's so neat, because I do think that a lot of times when a product is being developed, it's hard for consumers and even somebody who studies a lot of this stuff to understand just the incredible amount of research and people and the web of information and expertise that goes into something like this. So a lot of people are interested in the actual design of the droplet. On the blog, we did a little kind of a cutout, a section of the droplet to show the inner workings. I understand that you have a version of this that might be able to be like a show and tell. You can show people what it looks like on the inside. Would you mind showing us that?
Oh, absolutely. So our engineering team actually put this version of Droplet together, and it was made with a clear plastic, so you can actually see all the stuff that's inside of it. So we have our inductive charging cable, our circuit board over here, which is the green. You can see the piezo plate, and then our pump system on the bottom. And as you can see, it's pretty much jam-packed full of electronics. We just thought it was a cool little demo.
That is really neat, because honestly, you look at this, and because you guys have really made it quite simplistic. I mean, it's ergonomically friendly to use, and it's just really, it looks very basic. Clearly, it's not basic. I mean, we know it's not basic, but that is such a great example to see that the inner workings are pretty incredible compared to what we see, So thank you so much for showing us that. Thank you guys. For real. Thank you so much. This was really fun. I'm always happy to talk.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope it answered some of your questions. This is one of many conversations I have had with these ladies. They are so incredibly gracious and literally some of the smartest women I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section, because we've all agreed that we would do a part 2 if there were more questions. I hope that you're having a wonderful week. I hope that this video was helpful, and I'll talk to you in my next skincare video. Take care.